Hey everybody, Ketwolski here, checking in with our very first Star Trek Lower Decks episodes review. Today, of course, we are going to be talking about Season 1, Episode 1, Second Contact. So like I've done with my previous reviews, I'm going to talk a lot about what I really enjoyed and the kind of standout moments for me were for the show. I'm going to talk about some of the things that maybe I didn't like and kind of share my final thoughts at the end. So the first thing up that I really enjoyed was the intro credits. I thought the music kind of in the background and the font that was being used and all of that stuff, the way it was edited together and put together, very TNG, very old school classic Trek in my opinion. And yes, I say old school classic because to me TNG is old school classic Trek because I'm not that old. But very old school classic Trek, and I really enjoyed the fact that there was like all these fun little things happening with the Cerritos as it was moving around into space. It got hit by the asteroids. It kind of had this weird Titanic moment where it hit the iceberg thing and it kind of fell off the side of the map there. I thought that was really funny. Another thing that I really enjoyed was this shot here during the credits with the Romulans versus the Borg cubes. Obviously, we're getting the classic TNG Romulan Daredecks, warbirds there versus the Romulan Borg cubes. And I, of course, immediately connected this back to the, derelict Borg cube that we saw inside of Star Trek Picard. Maybe this Borg cube is kind of sitting out there in the field there. I don't know. Maybe not. I don't know. I thought it was like a fun, like little Easter egg piece there. Clearly showcasing the fact that the Romulans are still doing things at this point in time period and maybe help some people kind of get a sense of what's going on inside the world. But maybe I'm reading too much into that, but I just really enjoyed that shot. Another thing that I really enjoyed was this cool shot here as the ship was kind of just panning through. This felt very much like old school traditional TNG. Again, this whole episode just reeks of TNG in a good way, not reeks in a bad way, but in a good way, where it has that slow panning shot and the stars are zipping by. Very relaxing, very calming, nothing crazy about it. Everything is very relaxed and subdued, and it's just more familiar to the classic Star Trek vibe as opposed to like Discovery or Picard, where when you see them, they're at warp and it's like this aggressive, like, kind of like crazy thing happening. And that's not a bad thing at all. It's just much different. And this one is trying to do something different as well. It is trying to go back to something that we had seen previously. So I really enjoyed that shot. So during the, I guess you could say, like the crew kind of giving the tour to Ensign Tendi as she just arrived, this is where the show started to really come across as very disarming to me and really kind of put a lot of my concerns that I've really had going into like Picard or Discovery of like constantly being like apprehensive about everything under the sun of like what's happening here, why are they wearing this uniform, what's going on with this thing. This is just them wandering around completely unaware of everything else that's kind of going on the ship, and they're just focused on what they've got going on and kind of advancing and bantering back and forth and going to report to their bosses and their dates. And it's a very low threat, very disarming show, and that's one of the reasons why I think I liked it so much, is because we've had these high stakes shows with Discovery and Picard, and this one's coming in and saying, we're going to give you something very low threat, very easy to digest, and just to enjoy, period. And that really kind of just really drove it home for me during that whole walkthrough of the ship with Tendi, and then they went to the holodeck and did all that fun stuff. And I think that that's where I really was like, oh, this show is really just very low threat and very relaxed, and that's the way we should treat it. Another thing that I really enjoyed was this fun little establishing shot here. We see a bunch of different stuff here. We got the Argos in the corner, we have the transporter enhancement pads, we've got landed shuttles, we've got the Federation prefab shelters there for, dropping off supplies and stuff. I just like this because it kind of just, it's just a quick shot, but it really adds to the layers of depth that the creative team has really gone through, I think, to make this show feel like Star Trek and not just a random animated show. Like, they could have done anything with the way that looked. They could have drawn none of those things and just had the people standing there in an open field, but they bothered to put the Argo there as a reference. They bothered to put the landed shuttlecrafts, the prefab shelters that we've seen before, and the transporter enhancing pad things that we've seen before. And it just made a lot more sense. Like, it just reeked of Star Trek when you saw that. It was like, boom, punch you in the face. This is Star Trek. I just want to remind people. So I really like that shot a lot. Another thing that I really enjoyed was actually when Boimler, I'm gonna just ruin everybody's names for forever on this show, but Boimler, when he arrives on the bridge and he's like freaking out and he's like sweating and he can't hear anybody and like they're, he's getting yelled at. He doesn't really know what he's doing up there. This is something that I have talked about with my friends and even my dad. Like, we've made these jokes before, like, what if the young guy just shows up on the bridge and he's like super nervous, he's like fumbling with his coffee and stuff, because it's the bridge of a freaking Federation starship. So this is his first assignment. He's been in for only a year. They said in this episode that he, enlisted in '79 and he graduated from the academy in that year. So this is his very first year in Starfleet. So of course he's going to be very nervous, and I like that. I felt a connection to that because I've been in that situation where I was a young enlisted man and I had to go up to the boss's office or whatever, and it is very nerve-wracking, and you're very much on your P's and your Q's, and you don't want to touch the furniture. Like, it's very nerve-wracking, and I don't know, I just like that. I like that scene a lot. One of the things that I really did enjoy was that not only does this hang a lantern on a lot of the Star Trek tropes, and I'll get into some of the more other ones later on as we get through this episode, but one of the ones that is more recent with Star Trek is a lot of backstabbing and interpersonal conflict that goes on between the crews and, the people that impact the crews as well from an external factor. This one kind of hung a lantern on that little piece there. Again, the hung the lantern thing is like calling it out or calling attention to it, and is just like, we're not hiding from it, being a little bit self-aware. That's what that phrase means for those of you guys that don't know. So they hung a lantern on the whole situation of like the captain seeming very suspicious and, kind of being like, well, you better follow around Ensign Mariner and tell me if she does anything wrong and I'm going to nail her to the wall. And they play that whole thing up until the end, where it's revealed that that's Mariner's mother, and her and her dad are kind of like having like this weird feud about where she's supposed to serve and all this other stuff. So it was kind of like, it led you to believe that there was something super nefarious going on, but in reality it was just a bad relationship between mom, dad, and daughter, and there's probably going to be another sibling there that's going to be an all-star. That's just my theory, that's going to be rubbing it in everybody's faces. Why can't you be more like your brother, or something like that? And it was just great. I liked the fact that they kind of played on that trope of, like, when I first saw this, I was like, oh, so we're going to do this thing where there's going to be some kind of internal conflict, and a lot of conflict between the senior bridge crew and the lower decks crew. But really, it was just a completely different family feud thing, and kind of flipped the expectation on its head at the end there, which I really enjoyed. Okay, so with this episode, like any good Star Trek The Next Generation episode, you have your A and your B plot. In this case, it's hard to tell which one was the A or the B plot, and really there was even kind of a little bit of a C plot going on as well, but it is what it is. So you have your main A plot, as I feel like, which is the mission that's taking place on the planet between Boimler and Boimler B. Oh God. And Mariner, and they're on there doing their thing, and he's kind of tracking her, and she's the one that's giving away the farming equipment to the natives, and we'll get into that whole thing later. So that's kind of the A plot. The B plot, in my opinion, the B plot is actually the date between the two other characters here, where we have like the engineering guy, and then we have the Trill girl, whose name I've completely forgotten, so don't hate me for that. But their date, I think, is kind of the B plot, and then the C plot actually is this whole situation with the zombie virus, plague monster outbreak thing that has nothing to really do with anything, and that's just kind of serving as like background noise, which it would be for these characters because they don't really know what's going on, and they're just kind of along for the ride, and they're just doing things that they're supposed to be doing. So let's talk a little bit about the A plot. Boimler and Mariner are on the planet, and he is supposed to be following her based off the captain's orders to see if she does anything wrong, which she actually does do something wrong, because she gives away Federation farming equipment to a bunch of farmers that she had met when she was previously on this planet for the first contact mission, and now she's back again for the second contact mission after she got demoted. What's interesting about this is Boimler is definitely a by-the-books kind of person. He's brand new, he's squeaky behind the ears, he wants to do everything exactly the way that the regulation says it. Mariner is almost the exact opposite, where she understands all the regulations and the rules, she demonstrates that very much, but she kind of disregards them to try to do what she views as the right thing. And again, in this situation, she is doing something wrong by giving away the equipment, but they're both right in the sense that she's doing the right thing by those people, but the wrong thing by the regulations. And he wants to do the right thing by the regulations and not necessarily the right thing by the people. So they're both kind of opposites of each other in that aspect. And I like the fact that they kind of played on that a little bit, where she wasn't exactly completely in the right and he wasn't exactly completely in the wrong, and they kind of played that up. And I know I've said before, I've seen the second episode already as well, and they do continue to play on that dynamic quite a bit, especially in the second episode. There's a lot of back and forth with her style of doing things and his style of doing things, and neither one of them are exactly wrong. It's just that, well, you know, it is what it is. They have just different approaches. I know people may not like this, but I liked the gumming thing. I liked that whole sequence with the milk gag that was running through it. Like, you gotta eat that milk, you know. I liked that. I liked the whole gag there, and it was just fun to watch, you know. I wasn't necessarily like busting my gut laughing at it. It was fun to watch. It was entertaining. This giant spider creature, and of course they flip that, you know, expectation on its head. It doesn't actually hurt you at all. It's just gumming you for some moisture or whatever it was, and it was just funny, and I liked it quite a bit. One of the things that I did enjoy is the fact that the date between the two characters continued on throughout the episode, because very much like TNG style, and we'll get to how this kind of ends here as well, very much like TNG style, where everything kind of just, this is a starship. These things just kind of happen, and we're going to soft reset as things kind of continue on, and this is just par for the course. So for them, like, they're not going to cancel their date while this whole thing is going on, that they're not irresponsible officers. They're just very used to this kind of stuff happening all the time on the ship, because at first they're just still kind of chit-chatting in the bar, and then they're fighting with their phasers, and then they're walking outside the ship, and they're still kind of like doing things that they're supposed to be doing and doing things that they're being told to by their comm badges and stuff, but they're still enjoying their time together and still enjoying their date, which just shows to their experiences of the fact that this happens all the time. Very Star Trek in that sense, and I like that. I thought that was kind of funny, and again, that's why for me this kind of seemed like the B plot, and the C plot was the zombie stuff, because it doesn't really even matter. The zombie stuff was not even important. It was just this background noise to all of these other things that were going on as we were being introduced to all of our characters. Speaking of all of our characters, I did love this sequence here where the two of them are kind of floating outside the ship, which was a fun sequence, and you see the senior officer, chief security officer from the senior bridge crew in there fighting off all the zombies, because to them, they had just been told over the comm badge, meet at transporter room, whatever, and regroup there. So they're like, all right, whatever, because they're just these younger officers, so they're just doing what they're told. They don't really know what's going on. Their objective is to get to where they were told to go, whereas the senior bridge crew, which we've normally kind of spent time with, are the ones who made that decision to regroup there. So that's all happening off camera, and it's fun because when they're passing by, we're spending time with the couple, and they're passing by, and then you see the chief engineer, and he's fighting off all these zombies where the main action is happening. And that's where we normally would be at, but we're not there. We're with these guys. And it's kind of funny. Like, I liked how they were very self-aware of the fact that we're just focused on what these guys are doing, not necessarily everything that the senior bridge crew was doing. So it was a really great idea to put that shot in there. Other than it was just cool to showcase your chief security officer doing things and establishing that character. But it was also a really fun way to kind of establish where we as the audience are experiencing the show. I love this line where the dude was like, it hurts every time you pump my heart, and she has to keep doing it to keep him alive. I don't know. I thought it was funny. I thought it was really funny. So one of the things that I really enjoyed, and this is again very kind of classic Star Trek TNG, where the A plot and the B plot, and in this case the C plot, all intersect. So the couple arrives at the transporter room. Boimler and Mariner arrive back with the goo from the planet that he was covered in after being suckled on by the spider. And then all of the people that are dealing with the outbreak are all in the same location. And then it just so happens that the goo that was on him from that giant spider is also the cure for this wacky, crazy zombie rage virus. And then they all work together to get back to sickbay so that they can synthesize a cure. And so all the A, B, and C plots all synthesized together to create, just that final feel-good ending, which we got. We got a very good feel-good ending at the end where everyone's sitting around on the bar, they're all having drinks, and they're all just laughing because, again, we're immediately going right into that TNG style of soft resets. Every single episode, everybody almost dies, and people are eating flesh, and it's all this crazy stuff, and then the next episode, they act like they've never even heard of it before. They don't even like, what? Flesh-eating virus, what? So that's very TNG style, and we've already hit it in this episode. Before we even get to the next one, everyone's like, don't even worry about it. Yeah, that thing happens all the time. Anyways, let's talk about this, level 2 diagnostic that didn't work out correctly. So I thought that was great. I really enjoyed all the plots intersecting, and then they just reset the whole thing, and it's because it's not that big of a deal. And again, it enables that very low threat kind of approach. It's very disarming, where it's like, just enjoy this show. just be entertained and don't really stress about all of the little minutiae and all of the little details, and let the Easter eggs kind of enthrall you and pull you in, and let the excitement of the adventure kind of keep you here. So obviously one of the bigger reveals at the end of the episode is that Mariner is the daughter of the captain and also apparently an admiral, and I guess she had served on the Quito, which is a different ship. I'm assuming that might be his flagship that he's using. I don't know. They didn't necessarily kind of give a specific answer for that, but I find it interesting. Again, like I said earlier, the way that they flipped everything on its head and the way that they approached it was great. It was very refreshing, and I can't wait to actually see what's going on and what this dynamic is between mother and daughter and father, and why they had to demote her and what happened there, and why they kind of are being secretive about the fact that she is their daughter, and why she's being secretive about that, because obviously none of her friends in the Lower Decks crew are aware of her relationship to the captain. Otherwise they would have probably alluded to it in this episode. So clearly that's going to be a big reveal as well. So there's obviously a reason for that to be there, and I guess we're just going to find out why. Okay, guys and gals, that does wrap up my very long-winded review and reaction to Star Trek Lower Decks. I will remind everyone again to hang around. If you didn't necessarily love this one 100%, wait to the second episode. I thought this one was really good, but the second episode for me really knocked it out of the park. They really hit a different stride with that episode, and the jokes landed, I think, even better in that one, and there's not as much going on, whereas this one felt a little crazy, a little hectic all over the place. But it is a better episode, I think. Second episode is, so stick around at least for that one. But I love this show. I really hope that you guys and gals loved it as well. I know I've been kind of gushing about it for the last couple of days on social media, and I made a video yesterday talking about my first impressions, so I hope that maybe I didn't lead people astray. I'm very curious to hear what you guys think of this show now that you've had the opportunity to actually watch it. I really can't wait for your guys' reviews. And again, if you're not 100% sure on it, definitely wait to the second episode before you pass final judgment. I think the second episode captured things a little bit differently than the first episode did. So again, that does wrap it up here. We have the next episode next week, which I'm very excited to talk about. Obviously, I can't get into too many spoilers about that, but again, I thought it was pretty dang good as well. But what did you think about the first episode? Get your ideas up down below, and we'll go ahead and get the conversation started. Live long and prosper, my Trekkies!